Okay, so we're going to talk about blocks today, and we're going to talk about two different kinds of blocks that we can create in AutoCAD. And just as a reminder, so on Canvas I have our course manual definition of these items. In our overview document, I believe it's module 12 for blocks. Okay, so we have blocks, and zoom out here a little bit. We have inserting blocks, we have write blocks, W blocks, and inserting W blocks, which is really somewhat the same as a regular block. We're going to talk about using the Design Center to insert blocks. That may or may not be today, but all this information is in our module, okay? So the first thing I want to talk about is the idea of a block, all right, and what a block is, and the difference between a block, B-L-O-C-K, and a W block, right, W-B-L-O-C-K, all right. By definition, a block is a collection of objects, meaning lines, arcs, and circles, that form a cohesive and complex entity, like they come together to create things, essentially. So things like bathtubs and windows and doors and sinks and couches and tables, okay? So the idea behind a block is that AutoCAD uses a block to glue together a bunch of little pieces of geometry into one cohesive piece. All right, and the idea behind this is several-fold, really. Number one, the reason we want to glue these pieces together is so that if we have to move it, rotate it, copy it, it's all one piece, right? So there's no selecting individual pieces, hoping that we get everything in our selection, right? And that really just helps our precision, okay? So number one, for selection, it's just really easy to, select 400 pieces of geometry at once using a block instead of having to select a bunch of different things, okay? The second reason we want to use blocks is because if we draw them and we draw them correctly, okay, and let me just clarify, these are not blocks yet, all right? These are individual pieces of geometry so far, so let me just say that, okay? We're going to make them into blocks here pretty quick. But if you draw a block one time and you draw it correctly, then whenever you use that block in the future, that drawing is correct, right? That table is the right size, the chairs are the right size. There's no error in recreating objects, okay? So if you draw a table in one drawing, you might get it right, but in the next drawing, if you have to redraw the exact table again, maybe you make a mistake, right? It's an inch too big, whatever. So blocks, if they're drawn correctly, they will help kind of minimize that, right? Of course, there's always the chance you could draw the block incorrectly, so it's incorrect everywhere. That happens, hopefully not very often. So you just have to watch that, of course. So selection and copying and moving and manipulating objects that have multiple pieces, one reason for blocks. A second reason is for precision, okay? A third reason for creating blocks is for ease of making changes, okay? So when a block is created and when it's created, it kind of AutoCAD takes all the pieces of the block and it glues them all together into one entity, okay? Now, if you take that block and you insert it into your drawing and then you copy it around 4,000 times and then you realize it's the wrong size, if kind of in the old way of doing things, if you had not used a block and you had just drawn, random pieces of geometry, you'd copied that geometry around 4,000 times. Oh, great, there's an error. I have to go and correct it 4,000 times, right? But the nice thing about a block is that if you create and define a block, if there's an error in it, you only have to change one instance of that block and it changes every other instance in your drawing, okay? So that even if you do make an error in creating it, it's easily fixed because you can edit a block, make a change to one of them, and it translates to every other single block in your drawing, okay? A fourth reason to use blocks is to decrease your drawing time, okay? So ideally the way that this system should work is that if I draw this table right here one time and I make it into a block and I save it into my block library, the next time that I run into a place where I need to put this table, it'll already be drawn for me. I don't have to take 5 minutes and redraw this whole thing, hope that I get it to be the right size, and then place it in the drawing that I'm currently working in, okay? So, and that's how blocks work. I can create them one time, I can save them to what we call a block library, which can be accessed from multiple drawings, okay? And then when I need this table again, I just go to my block library, I find it, and I place it in the drawing that I need it in. All right, so using blocks is going to help you be more precise. You're going to be faster at drawing. You're going to be able to more quickly make changes, right? So there's a lot of reasons why we should use blocks. Okay. Now, things that we turn into blocks are very. I would say that if you're going to use an object more than 3 times, you will want to turn it into a block. Okay. So if I'm going to use this table maybe just one time, it's probably not a lot of effort to just draw it one time and use it, right? But if there are 400 of these in my drawing, you will want to create a block out of this and use it in block format, okay? So things like doors and windows and furniture and, you know, different things like that, those are all objects that you'll turn into blocks, okay? All right, so I think probably the first thing I'm going to talk about are the 2 different types of blocks that we have, and then I'm going to get into how we generate them, okay? So we have 2 different types of blocks in AutoCAD. We have the regular old block, B-L-O-C-K, and then we have W blocks, okay? And the W stands for write, W-R-I-T-E, block, okay? And the difference between the 2 is that a regular, I'll call it a regular old block, B-L-O-C-K. When you create a regular old block, it only lives in the drawing that you generated in, okay? So that means that if I create a block in this drawing and then I open up a new drawing, that block won't be in this drawing. It'll only live in this drawing, okay? And there's reasons for those types of blocks, okay? So things that, well, and I'm going to talk about this sort of professionally, blocks that you want to live in a drawing are going to be blocks that you use in every single project. Okay, so these would be blocks that you build into your template file, all right? So good examples of regular old blocks would be a title block, because every drawing from this point forward that we create, we're going to use a title block. Annotation, so window tags, door tags, room names, those are things that you use in every single drawing, right? Some select windows and doors, because generally speaking, every building, right, at least every building, will have windows and doors, okay? So blocks or, you know, pieces of geometry that you'll use in every single drawing, those are great to build into like your template file so that they're always accessible for you, okay? Now, blocks that maybe you use in a lot of your drawings, but maybe not every single one, are better W blocks, okay? And a W block means that the block is created and it's saved external from the drawing you're working in, which means that regardless of what drawing I'm working in, I can go and browse for that block and bring it in, okay? So whether I'm working in this drawing and then I switch to this drawing, okay? The blocks don't live inside my drawing, they live external from it in what we call a block library. And so W blocks, I can browse to that block library and I can bring them into any drawing I'm in, okay? Which makes them very versatile. So, you know, I could have 15 different drawings open, right? And with the W block, each one of these different drawings has access to that W block, where if I create blocks, every single one of these files may not have access to that block. Okay, so that's the difference between the 2. A regular old block, you create it, it lives in the drawing you created in. A W block, I create it, and it's essentially saved externally from the drawing I'm working in, which makes it accessible in any drawing. Okay? I'm going to show you exactly what that means in a minute, but before we do that, I want to show you how to create a block. Okay? All right, any questions so far about block definition or anything like that? Okay, so let's talk about how we're going to generate a block. Okay, the first thing I want to say is that when you're drawing blocks, you want to draw them how they look, right? And that might sound silly, of course, but it's true. So if you want to draw a bathtub, well, a bathtub is generally going to be oblong, right? It's going to be rectangular. And generally, you kind of have the skirt of the bathtub here, and then you have the actual tub itself, right? That's offset a certain distance from the outline. And then we have a drain down here. And if you want to get fancy, right, if there's jets or if, you know, the faucet or whatever, you could include that in it, okay? These blocks, generally speaking, in an architectural drawing, they're going to represent objects in that drawing. So we want to see graphically on the screen what that object looks like. So if you're creating a block that's a bathtub, make the bathtub look like a bathtub, right? This is a stove, right? It has our 4 little burners. It has that, you know, back area on it. It's got the handle, right? And the outline is the size that this actual stovetop should be, okay? We have a sink. We don't have a faucet showing, but we do have the outline of the sink. The size of the sink is the size it should be for your drawing, okay? The corners are filleted. We have, you know, it looks nice. We'll say that. We have a table here, we have a table here, and then we have a couch down here. And all of those objects, they look like the object they're meant to represent, okay? So they're the right size, and they have all the detail needed to illustrate that object. So that's the first thing I want to say about blocks. Draw them the way that they look and make sure they're dimensionally correct. Okay, so step number 1. Step number 2, when you draw a block, you want to draw it on layer 0. That's what layer 0 is for, all right? So if I come back here to my Home tab and I open up my layer properties, before this, I told you never draw on layer 0, right? And it's because we were saving it for this topic. We create blocks properly on layer 0. And the reason that we create our blocks on layer 0 is so that when we insert them, they take on the properties of the layer that is current, okay? So what that means is that layer 0 has some special qualities built into it, and these blocks, if I select one, you see that they were drawn on layer 0, okay? Layer 0 has some inherent special properties associated with it, so that when each of these, this loose geometry, when this is turned into a block and I insert it into a drawing, let me show you. Okay, this is a little trick I want to show you. You see how I skipped all the procedure and I made a block out of this? You see that as I insert it, because the current layer is furniture, and because this block was generated on layer 0, which was the white layer, when I place this block, right, it is on the current layer, which is furniture, and it assumes the properties of the layer it's inserted on. Okay, that's what layer 0 will do for us. It will allow that block to assume the properties of the layer it's inserted on. Okay, now I'm going to hit undo here, and I'm going to change the layer of this block to furniture, and then I'm going to change my current layer to text, right, to show you what would happen. Okay, now you see my current layer is text, but because I created this block on that furniture layer, right, and not layer 0, when I click, it doesn't assume the properties of the layer I've inserted it on, right? Which is bad because we want our blocks to be on the proper layer with the proper color, because that then translates to a pen weight, right? We want it to print the right pen weight. And so if we don't create them on layer 0, they won't print right, and your drawings won't look correct, okay? I'm going to hit undo. There we go. So we draw our blocks the way that they look in a drawing, right? We draw them to real world size, so they're the correct size. We draw them on layer 0, which then means when we insert them, they'll insert onto the layer that is current, okay? Now if I insert a layer or a block on a layer and it's not correct, I can always select that block and I can change the layer. That's no problem, okay? All right, so let's talk about how we're going to define blocks. And the first one I'm going to define is going to be just a regular old block, B-L-O-C-K, all right? And we're going to go to Insert, okay? And under insert, you're going to see we have block definition, and eventually we're going to talk about references. Today we're going to talk about this little block tool palette. On Wednesday, we're going to talk about block definition with regard to attributes, and we're going to do that right here, okay? So we have a couple of things we're going to pay attention to here on the block menu. We have this little drop down, the insert, okay? And we have a little gallery here that shows the different blocks that currently live in our drawing, all right? If I click on this little drop down here, we have retain attribute, display, we have block right here, not a whole lot, right? Sorry, I lied. We are going to use this menu here a little bit today. And then over here to the right, we have create block. So we're going to use insert. We're not going to worry about edit attribute today, but we are going to create some blocks, okay? If I click on this little drop down, I have create block and W block, all right? So we're going to talk about both of those. I can also type at the command line, BLOCK, enter, and that will bring up the block definition dialog box. And I can type in W, BLOCK, enter, and the right block, the W block dialog box pops up, okay? All right, so right now, I want to define a block, just a regular old block, BLOCK, and I want you to realize that when I do that, when I create the block, it's only going to live in this one drawing that I've created it in, okay? So the first thing I would have done is I would have drawn my block. So I would have gone to home, and I'm just going to kind of generate one that looks like this, okay? I would have made sure I'm on layer 0. I would have clicked on, you know, whatever I needed to click on. There's a big table, right? Circle. I would have drawn this just however I wanted to draw it. Trim, TR, enter, enter, click. Mirror, MI, enter. Okay. And we're going to copy these, and we're going to RO, rotate them, maybe like 45 degrees, enter. I'm going to select those, M for move, and I'm just going to move them over here onto my table. I should have rotated them a little bit more. Oh, I think I messed it up, didn't I? Let me hit undo there. Okay. Move. Okay. There we go. It's a giant table with 4 chairs at it. There we go. Okay. So now that I've generated the geometry that I want on here, and I could add some more, right? I could use circle, and I could add a few more of these. And I'm just kind of winging it. I'm not making things the right size. You all make things the right size, right? Okay. Oop, that one's too big. Trim. There we go. There we go. So we have a table with all these chairs around it. It looks wonderful. And now it's time for me to create my block. Okay. So I could type BLOCK at the command line. I could also come over here to Insert, Create Block. I'm going to drop down and choose Create Block. Now, one thing I want to point out here too is I'm creating my block. I'm kind of in the command now to create my block. And if I realize that maybe I'd left something out, or something was wrong, not to worry, because I can still create my block and I can edit it, right? So I can make changes to blocks once they've been generated. I just want to point that out, okay? All right, the first thing I'm going to do is give this this block a name. And there's lots of talk on how to name blocks. The way that I sort of like to name blocks is the same way that we name layers, okay? So that's my method, because I feel like it's a system that we already use. I think it's descriptive enough, and it makes sense, right? So I'm going to name this like A-furniture, fern, dash TBL, table, TABL maybe, and then we could say something like 60 inches, 60 IN, right? That's a kind of a long description. I don't usually get that descriptive, but if it was a door, I would probably say something like A-door-36 inches, right? A-window, which is glazing in architectural terms, so A-GLAZ-48 inches, okay? We want it descriptive enough that you recognize it when you see it, you know what it is, and you know the dimension of it, okay? We have two things to worry about, three things to worry about after we give it a name. The first thing we have to do is we have to click on this pick point, and we have to pick a base point for insertion for this object, okay? And a base point for insertion is essentially the point that when you then go back to insert this block, well, it's the point that AutoCAD chooses to allow you to place it, okay? So if I click on pick point now, click, it bumps me out of the interface and says choose a pick point on this object. So if I chose the middle, when I go to insert it, AutoCAD's going to allow me to insert it from this middle point. If I choose one of these chairs, it's going to choose the back of that chair as the insertion point, all right? I think maybe the best insertion point to choose, or the best pick point, would be, you know, what's going to help you place it, right? For a door, probably a point on the door jamb would make sense, right? For this table, probably the midpoint. So I'm going to click and choose my pick point. Now, AutoCAD says, okay, great, we know the name of this block, we know the base point, so tell us what objects you want to include in this block. Okay, so I'm going to click on Select Objects, click, and I just select all of the objects that I want included in this block. Okay, we are making furniture blocks right now, so I'm just picking, you know, one single piece of furniture. But if you had a layout, like you had a living room set with a couch and a chair and a rug, whatever, right? You could define a block with more than one object in there. Let me just say that. When I'm done selecting, I hit enter, just like every other command. And then I have to tell AutoCAD what to do with this block once it's generated, because the second I hit OK, this block will be generated. All right. Do I want to keep the objects as they are, meaning loose geometry? So do I want to retain? Do I want to convert this object to a block itself so that I can immediately start using it? Or do I want to create a block and then delete these objects out of AutoCAD? Okay. And my preference is always convert to block, because I feel like if I'm creating a block in general, I'm going to use it in that drawing. Okay. So I choose convert to block. We're going to leave these things alone for now. And I'm going to hit OK. All right. And not a lot happened, right? We saw a little blink on the screen. But now when I click on that table, I see that it's a block. Okay. So I see that I have one grip, right? And I know that that one grip is the insertion point. Okay. I can click on that grip and I can move this around if I need to, right? I can CO, copy it. Right? I could rotate it, I could grab it, and I could hit delete. Oop. Select delete. All right. So there's our first block. Now I'm going to delete this block out of my drawing. I'm going to delete that on the screen. And how do I find it once? Maybe I deleted it. Now I need to find it. How do I use that block? To use a block, you're going to insert it. Okay, so what we just did was a block definition, and now it's time to insert the block for use. Okay, so to insert the block, I could type I, enter the command line, insert, oop, maybe it's II. Ooh, our insert menu looks like current drawing. There we go. Ooh, our insert menu looks a little bit different than it used to. It's more of a tool palette now. If you're using an older version of AutoCAD, this pops up like it used to pop up like a dialog box, okay? So I clicked on current drawing. It was on recent, but I clicked on current drawing, okay? All right, so we have this table that I cheated and I created this. Here is our second table that we generated, A-furniture-table-table-60 inches, okay? So click on that, and I click, and that I just inserted my table. Okay, I can also come up here to insert, and I have my gallery, right? And I have recent blocks, and it looks like this is a new one, blocks from other drawings. Okay, we're going to talk about this in a second though, in a different manner. So I'm going to choose, I could choose one of these, or I could choose recent blocks. I want to use this table, so I click on it, click, and there it is. I click on, you guys don't have this one in yours, but if I clicked on this one, I could also place that as a block. Okay, so I can move, I can rotate, I can copy. Works great, right? It's a great system. It allows me to take a piece, several pieces of geometry, glue them all together. It allows me to copy, move, and rotate. I'm allowed to edit this, and if I edit this in one place, it edits all instances, okay? And one thing that I am also allowed to do that I haven't talked about is I'm also allowed to, if I wanted to edit this block, but I wanted to leave all the other instances in the drawing alone, I could explode this block, okay? I'm not positive if we've talked about explode yet in this class, but explode is a way to undo a block. It takes a block, all the cohesive pieces, and it blows it apart, okay? So it breaks it from being a block back into its component pieces, all right? It essentially undefines the block. All right, so if I want to explode a block, it's a modification command. Don't ask me what the icon looks like. Oh, I bet it's this one. Explode. There we go. Okay, EXPLODE. So I click on explode. I select a block or an object. I hit enter. And now I've just undefined the block. Okay, that doesn't mean that the block doesn't still exist in my drawing, because it does. If I go to insert and I choose insert, it's still there and I can still insert it, right? There it is. Click. But this single instance I have exploded, and the definition of that block is gone, okay? Most of the time when I explode a block, it's because I want to create a secondary block that is similar to the first one, but maybe slightly different, right? So maybe I want to add some detail, right? Maybe I want to take away a chair, right? But essentially I explode this because I want to reuse the geometry. I don't want to redraw it again, and so I can explode it and reuse it if I needed to, okay? All right, so that's a block, okay? And this block only lives in the drawing that I've generated it in, okay? So if I go now to a new drawing and I go to insert and I go to my gallery, you see that in this new drawing, it's not accessible, okay? Although now we have, we have our blocks from other drawings, which is kind of nice. Oh, it's the same interface as W block, so we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so now, I've drawn all these blocks, I've drawn all this furniture, and I think, oh, I'm going to start a brand new project for somebody, and I start drawing, and I think, oh, I want to use that table block that I generated. Well, because I created it as a regular old block, I don't have it in this current drawing, and I really need it, right? And that's why we have W blocks. That's why we have two different types of blocks, all right? So regular old blocks, good for things that you use in every single drawing, and it's great to use to add blocks to your template file, so that then moving forward, you can use those blocks in any drawing, okay? So systems blocks, annotation, and things you use in every drawing. Good for regular old blocks. Every other block is suitable as a W block, okay? And a W block is a right block. That's what the W stands for. And it's called a right block because when we use the W block command, essentially the block that you create, it's generated in the drawing you're in, but then a copy of it is written out, right? Right block. A copy is written out to a file on your computer that you can then go to and browse to find that block and use in other drawings. So it just really makes the block accessible in another drawing, okay? So I'm going to show you how to create a right block now. Like I said, the process is really similar to creating a block. There's just an extra step of telling AutoCAD where to write it out to. So I'm going to go to Create Block, W block, okay? The source of this block is objects. We need to pick a base point, click, it bumps us out. I'm going to create a right block out of this table right here. So I click on the table's base point, select objects. I'm going to choose convert to block. And I say that because, again, if I'm creating a block, likely I want to use it in the drawing I'm in. So convert to block. I'm going to select my objects. Okay. If I forget to select my objects and I hit OK, AutoCAD will say, you haven't selected any objects. So it'll remind me. But I'm going to click on Select Objects. Okay, select my objects. When I'm done selecting, hit Enter. Now we have one more step here that we didn't have when creating a regular old block, and that is to tell AutoCAD where to write it out to. So I'm going to click on this little ellipsis right here. I'm going to go to my, wherever you save your AutoCAD assignment files. I'm going to create a new file called block library. Okay, and I'm going to start saving my write blocks in here. And whenever I want to use those write blocks again, because they're all saved in this one location, I can find them and use them a lot easier, right? So whether it's on your thumb drive or at home, on your PC or whatever, I would create a folder called block library, and I would save all your new blocks in here, your W blocks. So again, I'm going to name mine according to a layer naming convention just to make it easy. A dash furniture dash table dash 48 inches. I don't know how big it is. Okay. I hit save and I hit OK. And again, nothing really appears to have happened, right? But it did. I click on that table and now it's a block, okay? And if I click on insert, there it is again. There it is with the right name, okay? And if I want to use it, I go to insert and I pick it and I click and I can use it, which is wonderful, right? But now if I go to another new drawing, I go to drawing number 3, right? Where I go to insert and there's nothing there. I can choose insert, blocks from other drawings. We'll use this interface right here. I go to my desktop. Remember my block library location? I go to my block library. I click on that furniture block that I created. I hit open. Okay, and there it is, right? So now I have the ability to use blocks. Click on it. Oop. Now I have the ability to use blocks that are in my block library. Okay, and as in other programs, the second that I insert a block from my block library, now this block lives in this drawing, and I can go to insert, there it is, and I can continue to use it. Okay, so my preference, right, again, systems type blocks are going to be BLOCKS blocks, regular blocks, right? And you create them in your template file, things like a sampling of doors, a sampling of windows, and some annotation, right? But for me, every other thing that I generate as a block, I'll create as a W block, because very likely, if you use it once, you're going to use it in another drawing. And I don't like drawing things more than once, right? So I will create a table, I'll save it as a W block, and now I have access to it, it's there, and I can use it whenever I need it, okay? Again, a reminder, I've been a little bit, we'll say willy-nilly again, right, about my block creation, because I didn't draw these blocks, right? They were provided for me. But again, when you generate these, you really want to make sure that you generate them on layer 0 and that they're dimensionally correct, okay? Any questions so far? Okay, so here, this will be your assignment file, of course. I'm going to delete these over here just to be nice and neat. And you're going to create you're going to create W blocks out of all of these different drawings. Okay, so for me, just because I like to check things, I like to check and just make sure before I do something that they've been generated correctly. So I'll click on a line and go back to my home tab and just make sure everything's on layer 0. I could select everything at the same time, layer 0, all looks good, right? So I check all of that type of stuff before I start generating my blocks. And we're gonna create W blocks, okay? These are all on layer 0, looks really good. And let's create a W block out of this table, okay? So I'm gonna type WBLOCK at the command line. I'm a command line person. Enter. And all of my objects I want in the W block. I'm going to choose a pick point. In this case, again, I just try and choose a point that's helpful for me. In this case, because it's not a circle, I'll probably pick like an endpoint over here, or maybe the middle of a back of a chair for my, my insertion point. Whatever's going to help me place this object. So I click, select objects, click. I select the objects I want to be in the block. I hit enter. Now I browse to my block library to save this. You click on the ellipsis. Okay, we're going to call this a-furniture-table-rectangular, right? I hit save. I hit OK. And that W block has just been generated. And again, right, the difference between a block and a W block is that that W block it's written out of my AutoCAD file into my block library. So there's my block library. Now you can see I have two different files in there. Okay. All right, let's do the couch. W-B-L-O-C-K, enter. Pick point, maybe the back middle, click, select the objects, right? We get quick at this. It's not really that difficult of a process. I hit enter. I click. This is a-furniture-sofa, maybe dash 84 inches, right? 84 IN. Enter. I hit OK, and I've just created another block, okay? A W block. Now these W blocks, right now, because my current layer was 0, they're on layer 0. But if I wanted to change them to the proper layer, I could select, drop down to furniture, there we go, okay? Now that we're a little bit more mature in AutoCAD, we can be maybe a little more responsible. I'm going to show you, I think we've talked about match properties a little bit in AutoCAD, but maybe not a whole lot. I can change one object to the correct layer, and then I can use match properties to match the rest. Okay, match properties is, or we have match layer right here, MA, match layer. I can click on one object, and then click on a second, click on a third. Oh, nope, sorry. Where's our match properties? Layers, let's see. Maybe I just was supposed to hit enter in between there. There we go. Match prop, MA. Let's find the, not match layer, we want match properties. Where is it? Well, anyway, I'll find it, but match properties, MA, enter, will allow me to click on one, and my little paintbrush pops up. Click on a second, and it matches it. Click on a second, and it matches it to that, right? So instead of having to pick one, pick two, pick three, drop down, I could pick one, and then I can match all the others to that one, which you'll probably see me do a lot, actually. All right. So I've created these 3 W blocks, and I can see that I've generated them correctly because of my block library. There they are, okay? But maybe I made a mistake, right? Maybe the couch was the wrong size, or maybe I wanted to include a little side table with my couch. But the point is, I need to take a block that I've already generated, and I need to edit it, okay? So I'm going to copy this couch first. I'm going to make 3 copies of this couch, okay? And, 3 copies is not a whole lot, but what I want to show you is that I can edit one instance, and that will then edit the other 2 instances in my drawing, okay? We have a couple of different ways that we can go about editing our blocks, all right? So if I double click on a block very quickly twice, click, click, I get an edit block definition, okay? And it shows me the name of the block that I'm going to edit. It shows me a preview, and I can hit OK. So what I've done here is I've entered the block editor, all right? So this will allow me to kind of in a separate interface that's still within AutoCAD, change the geometry of my current block. So I could come in here and I could say, well, we don't like these back cushions, so I'm going to delete those, right? Let's delete that, delete that, delete that. Okay, maybe I want to, we'll do a circle. Maybe I want to draw a little, table in front of here. That's how I want it to look. And maybe I want to fillet these corners. F for fillet, enter. Radius, enter. 1, enter. I can add some more detail. Looks wonderful. Okay. Maybe I want to, oop, we've got some weirdness here. Trim, TR, enter, enter. Trim that off. Okay. So I made a couple of little changes, and that's sufficient. Within my block editor, I can hit close block editor right here with is the check mark. Click. Would you like to save the changes? Yes, save the changes. And now all of those blocks reflect that change, right? Click, click. Okay. I can come in and delete that, hit finish or close, save the changes, yes, and there we go. Okay. So that's one way of editing a block. I can double click on it and it brings me into the block editor. And that's wonderful, right? It sort of takes you out of the AutoCAD interface. It allows you to dimensionally change it, add detail, do whatever. But there are going to be instances where, like with a door or a window block, that you want to use the surrounding area in AutoCAD to edit it, because the edits are going to be driven by drawing around the block, okay? And that's called an edit in place. So if I click on my block, okay, if I choose right click, we have edit block editor, so that's what we were just in. So just like, you know, everything in AutoCAD, there's 3 or 4 different ways of accomplishing a task. So I can double click on a block, and I can also right click and choose block editor, reset block, or edit block in place. So if I choose edit block in place and I hit OK, now I'm allowed to edit the geometry, but I'm still in model space. I can see the things around it, right? Which if I'm editing a door block, that's helpful because I can use the walls around it to edit it, okay? So here, let's just F for fillet, R for radius. Let's fillet the radius maybe of this couch. There we go. Looks wonderful, okay? And maybe I'm going to offset a couple of lines here for whatever reason, right, to make it look different. There we go. Okay, now that I'm done making my changes, and this one's a little bit harder to see, but up here in the top right hand corner we have save changes. Okay, we also have discard changes. So I'm going to click on save changes. Would you like to save them? Okay. Now those changes have been made and they're reflected in the other instances of those blocks. Okay. So I can double click to go into the block editor. I can click on this, I can right click, go into the block editor or edit block in place. Another third way of going about this is once my block is highlighted, you'll see on the home tab, we have that mini block tool palette here. I can click on edit, right? And there's some other editing things with regard to attributes, which we'll talk about on Wednesday, but you know, just different ways to edit these, okay? So things I want you to remember about blocks. We have regular old blocks, B-L-O-C-K. When you create a regular old block, it's only generated in the drawing that you're currently in, okay? W blocks are write blocks, which means that when you create a write block, a copy of that block is saved out of AutoCAD so that you can access it in other files, and you can bring that block in and use it, okay? We draw our blocks on layer 0. And the reason we do that is so that when we insert them, they're inserted onto the current layer, and layer 0 will allow you to assume the properties of the layer it's inserted on. Okay? Choose an insertion point that's going to be helpful to place that block in the future. So if it's a circular table, maybe the center. If it's a door, maybe the corner of the door jamb. If it's a stove, maybe the middle center. Okay? Once you've created a block, if you need to edit it, you can double click on it, you can select it and right click, and you can edit it. And when you edit a block, regardless of where you're at, it will edit every instance of that block with the same name in the drawing. So if I have 400 instances of this couch and I make a change, it updates all 400 instances of that couch. All right. If I want to leave all of these couches alone, but I want to create a new couch that's very similar to this couch, I can take one instance and I can explode it. Explode, select, enter, and exploding a block undefines it. I can edit it, right? I can add a circle or do whatever. Okay. I can reblock it, and that will create a second block using the same geometry. Okay. But by me exploding it, the original block stays intact, and I can create a secondary one that is very similar to it. Okay. May not make total sense today, but hopefully when we talk about it again on Wednesday, it will make total sense, hopefully. Things that you create blocks into, doors, windows, annotation, some types of annotation like window and door tags, furniture, really anything that is going to be used, I would say even more than once or twice in a drawing. Okay? Now, a couple more things before we stop for today. I want to talk a little bit about these write blocks that are in this file, this block library, okay? Because I very clearly remember learning about blocks when I was in school, and I thought, you know, these look an awful lot like an AutoCAD file, and they are, okay? So the way that this system works is that when you're in AutoCAD and you export a write block, it essentially saves a copy of that drawing to an external drawing file. All right. So if I look at these files in my folder here, they look like AutoCAD files, and they are. Okay. What makes them a block is when I'm in the AutoCAD interface and I type I for insert, enter, and I browse for that, okay? Oops, I'm gonna come over here. Sorry guys, insert. Okay, when I browse for that, let's go, blocks from other drawings, there we go. No, what am I looking for here? When I browse for that and I bring it into my drawing, okay, that bringing the file from its location into the drawing, that is what makes it a block. Otherwise, this is just an AutoCAD file here, okay? I can double click on it and I can open it, and it just shows me all of the loose geometry in that file. I can close it, okay? So these live out here in my block library's AutoCAD files, and what makes them a block is using the insert feature in AutoCAD to insert them into model space. That is what makes them a block, okay? It was really confusing for me when I learned this because I thought they're AutoCAD files. Well, yes, they are AutoCAD files, but when you insert them, they become a block. That is what turns them into a block, okay? All right. So any questions so far? All right, I want to go over, I want to talk about your assignments here real quick because, as I said at the beginning of class, some of these are very intertwined, and I want to go over that. So you are going to have, we're under annotation, dimensions, and dimension styles, which we talked about last week. There is office layout and dimension. There's multi-leader. These are two assignments you're going to have to do. But I want to show you this office layout and dimensions because it encompasses a little bit more than just the dimensions, okay? So I'm going to click on office layout exercise and take a look at that. This isn't going to be due for 2 weeks. Okay, I'm actually going to change the due date to 2 weeks from now. But this is what you're going to be drawing, essentially, okay? And I will get this drawing started for you on Wednesday. So you're going to be drawing this office space, and some of the things I want to talk about. You're going to use line geometry to create the walls, right? So you're going to create a brand new drawing. You're going to make sure that there are AIA named layers in there with the right color assigned to them. You're going to draw the walls, okay? You're going to create a text style that's annotative, if you haven't already in your template file, of course, and you're going to add text to this file. You're going to create an annotative dimension style, and you're going to use that annotative dimension style in this drawing as well, okay? You are going to draw a double door block. You're going to define it as a block, and you're going to use it in this drawing. You're going to create these furniture blocks, and you're going to use them in this drawing. All right. We have, you know, some angles that we're going to have to draw. You have doors that you're going to insert. You also have window blocks that you're going to create, and you're going to use them in this drawing. It sounds like a lot, right? And it is. But right now you're going to kind of create the pieces. You're going to create these blocks, right? You're going to create your dimension styles, get your drawing ready. And then on Wednesday, we're going to start this file together. And I think once you see me kind of move through this drawing file, it's not going to look as bad as it really maybe you think it is. Students always think this is so hard and how are we going to do this, right? But once I get you going on it, everybody's like, oh, that's not too bad, right? But I want to prepare you because you may want to start getting this file going, okay? So to get this file going, you could open your template file. Hopefully you have layers created in there. If you don't, you can create them, okay? Create a text style, create a dimension style, right? That would be a good step to get this assignment going. And know that when we meet next time, I'll get you going on how to start drawing it, but also we'll talk about drawing like this, this double door block and inserting it and using it with like your walls, how it interfaces with the walls, okay? So this is going to be one assignment. The final portion of this assignment will be creating a title block, which we'll talk about next time, and inserting the title block, okay? So by the time you're done with this drawing in 2 weeks' time, you'll very easily be able to create this. Everybody always looks at this thinking it's very daunting, and then they draw it very quickly and do just fine, okay? But this is one assignment you're going to have to do. And it really is comprised of a lot of different pieces. Let's go back here. Okay. Multi-leader is a separate assignment from this. This is going to be one that you'll complete, and it relates to our lecture on last Wednesday. You're going to create a multi-leader style, and you'll look at these and these will make sense. But essentially you're going to create a multi-leader style and add some leaders to a drawing. These next assignments, and these assignments are going to feed also into this office layout. So we have really 12B, C, and D. These three feed into office layout and dimensions. And then this first one, block tutorial, this is really just practice creating, inserting blocks. Okay, so I'm going to open this up and I want to show you this. Okay, let's just preview it. And I like to talk about this one beforehand because I think everybody gets really scared of what these things are, and it doesn't matter, right? They're shapes. That's really how I want you to think about it. So we have these shapes, okay, and you're going to make these into blocks, and then you're going to place them in the drawing at specific places. And it doesn't matter what they are. You don't have to know what they mean. You just have to know that you're going to make a block and you're going to insert it in the right spot, okay? You're going to start with this file, block insertion. Let's take a look at it, and I think this will make a little bit more sense. Here's what it looks like. So you're given the symbols. You are to create a block out of this piece, and then this piece separately, and then put them into this line drawing so that your drawing ends up looking like this, essentially. Okay? So again, don't worry about what they actually mean, just get them in the right spot. Okay, so it's good block practice. And then you're going to have an assignment that is W blocks. You're going to be creating some W blocks, and it actually starts with the file we were looking at today. So your assignment will be to create W blocks out of all of those things that we generated or we were working with today. Okay. Doors, windows, and furniture. This is something we'll talk about on Wednesday, and I'm going to get you going on how to draw these. But you're going to be drawing some more blocks, right? So by the time you're done with this office layout assignment, you'll probably have 10 or 15 blocks. But this will show you how to create, this door block, and with the added information of how do we get this door tag working, which I'm going to show you on Wednesday. Okay. So even the furniture blocks, here are all the dimensions, okay? And then title block, you're going to draw a title block and you're going to insert it into your drawing, which we'll talk about on Wednesday. Okay, and this is what they're going to look like. And I will go over how to draw this. This lecture might bleed into next week a little bit. Okay. But I think for now, probably the most important thing is I would get a file started for this office layout so that when we start drawing it, you can kind of be ready for that. And that will involve starting a new blank file, setting your units to architectural, if you don't have your template up to date, that is, creating a dimension style, a text style, getting things ready to draw, okay? I'm going to make these assignments available, and I think another good thing for you to start doing would be to practice creating blocks. So this 12A and 12B are going to be really good things to start practicing, and we'll talk about 12C and D on Wednesday, okay? Any other questions so far? Okay, I'm going to stop our video here.